Your hot tub curmudgeon has a very serious topic today. So, if you want to contact me, I can give you citations for this. I meant to do it before I started yapping, but there's an article in the New York Times about how the rhetoric used by today's states' rights and gun rights and conservatives, that their rhetoric is identical to the rhetoric of the pro-slavery politicians before the Civil War. You can map it one-on-one. And then there's an article I saw on Facebook recently about how the science of the differences between black people and white people was developed before the Civil War, and in some cases I guess it's still being used in the medical community. So here's what comes to me. It was time to get rid of slavery, but on one side you had people who actually lived cheek by jowl with black people and said, no, we don't want these people as fellow citizens. We don't want them running free. We don't want them living amongst us as free men. They are biologically different. They are intellectually and biologically inferior. And so they had science on their side. They had the Bible on their side. The Bible supports slavery. So, everything that was credentialed, the Bible and science, said, no, we don't want to liberate these black people. And yet, people who did not live with black people, didn't much want to live with black people, weren't making any effort to bring back people up north to live with them, all said, oh, we got to do away with slavery. So we did. Now, it's a damn good thing that we did, but I want to look at what is the criteria that we use to decide that something is a good thing. And so it was a bad thing to keep up with slavery, and a bunch of people just said, we're going to end it. Now, the Civil War was not fought to end it. If you'd asked 100 randomly chosen Union soldiers, I doubt if you'd have found 1 or 2 out of 100 that would have said, oh yeah, we're fighting to end slavery. No, they were not. Okay, so then along comes women's suffrage. It's time to give women the vote. And there's all this science and there's all this Bible gobbledygook about that, no, women should honor their husband as the husband honors Jesus. That's the line of authority, Jesus, husband, wife. And that, there's all this science about that the women are not really ready to be working in a man's world. Okay. And, right down the line we go, and you got people on one side who have religion and science on their side. It's bogus science, but it was the best of that day. And then on the other side, you got people, and all they're saying is, it just ain't right. It ain't right. So we did it. We did away with slavery, and we gave women the vote. And we're in a better world, a much better world now. Looking back, we can see the taint, the stain on our nature, that we would hold people in enslavement, that we would hold women down and limit their possibilities. And now there's all these countries around the world that can't seem to get up and off their butts and do anything, can't send a rocket to the moon, because half their population is wearing scarves over their face and can't drive. Okay. Now, so let's put this thing in the next phase or whatever. So my grandsons are very liberal thinkers. And so if the proposition was put that women should be allowed to sell their bodies for sex and make money, my grandsons would say, well, yeah, it's freedom of choice. But us old farts who've been around a little bit and seen what sexual abuse of a child produces in a grown woman, and we've seen what addiction does and how a person will do anything. They will sell their mother, they will kill their mother, they will steal all their mother's property to sell it and buy drugs, and they sure as hell will sell their bodies for drugs. And depression. We've seen the devastation of depression. We've seen the devastation of all kinds of emotional and mental illnesses. And so as old farts, we can't imagine that anything could be put in place to protect women so that the only women allowed to sell their bodies for money would be women who'd had perfectly glorious, wonderful, supportive childhoods where their parents loved them. Nobody ever laid a hand on them until they were 18 years old, and they're not addicted to drugs, and they have no mental illnesses, and only, would like to do it, like get out there and sell their bodies for sex. So we can't imagine that there'd be any such scheme that would protect women and make sure that only such highly qualified women were allowed to sell for sex. All right. So what is the criteria that would support my grandson saying, well, hey, it's freedom of choice, they ought to be able to do it? Or that allows us old timers to say, this is a bad idea, we ain't gonna do it. So are us old timers in the category of the enslavers, of those who oppress women? How are these things to be decided? Now, the argument can be made that, well, you just put it up for a vote. Well, if the vote had been south of the Mason-Dixon line, it was no, And in fact, I think if it had been voted on, if slavery had been voted on throughout the entire Union, and part of the vote was, okay, if you're going to free all these black folks, then we're sending them up north to your cities, I don't think it would have passed the vote. So I don't know that a vote's going to do it. Well, and for women's suffrage, women themselves voted, no, we don't want suffrage. There are plenty of women campaigned vigorously. No, we don't want suffrage. Now I'm wondering maybe about prohibition. There are people who say, oh, no, you can't prohibit people from drinking alcohol. Well, the statistics of how much alcohol Americans were consuming before Prohibition and then after Prohibition, the evidence to me looks like that Prohibition did a good thing. It kind of whacked Americans on the side of the head and said, why don't we stop drinking? Why don't we control the alcohol a little bit? So Prohibition may have been a good thing. So why is that? Why are some things, some radical changes in the social construction good, and how? How do we decide that they're good? I don't think a vote is the way. What is it? Now, I am kind of a spiritual, religious nut, and I kind of suspect that the spirit of the human spirit, good, as Abraham Lincoln put it, the angels of our better nature, or the better angels of our angels of our better nature. I wonder if maybe that's what draws us forward in these times. Why don't you take me to coffee, dang it?